Thank you everyone for coming out this evening. We've been doing this for now this will be the 13th event. I kicked this off last August. We were in this conference room over there. It was hot and sweaty. We decided maybe we'll turn on the AC next time and gone to a bigger room. So it's been a really fabulous journey. We've went from 0 to now 1,700 members of the Enterprise Sales Community right here in New York City. We have a group that's focused on sales development, inside sales group that's growing rapidly as well, also here in New York City. And we're also launching Boston in September. So if any of you have connections or folks that you know up in Boston, please tell them about the Boston Enterprise Sales Meetup. A few logistical notes. We like to keep things here nice and tidy. We have this really great company called Workbench, which sponsors this beautiful, beautiful location. So please make sure you take care of any litter or trash, or beer bottles, or wine, or whatever your beverage of choice is this evening. If you're into the whole social media thing, I like to do the whole Twitter thing myself, but we are at enterprise_sale. And you can hit us up by the hashtag B2B Sales. And I'll be monitoring very vigorously, so please tweet and retweet. We have a wonderful agenda this evening. We're going to be talking about this whole concept of enterprise sales and what you do specifically around enterprise sales for hiring. We have a really great panel this evening, and we'll be talking about more of their backgrounds in a little bit, but really just pleased to have Brian and Matt and Caroline here this evening for us to share their thoughts on hiring. And none of this would be possible without some really great support from some amazing sponsors. I do just want to give up just a few seconds for Jess to talk about this wonderful place, Workbench.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mark. Good evening, everyone. Thrilled to have you guys with us every month, as you are. My name is Jessica Lynn. I'm the Community Director here at Workbench. For those of you who are new to Workbench, we are a venture fund and growth accelerator for enterprise startups. So you can see a complete list of our startups on our Facebook wall. And if any of you are interested in joining some of the most exciting hyper-growth enterprise startups in New York City, please check out our careers page. Come find me after. I'm happy to make introductions and go from there. So thanks again for joining us tonight.
And also just want to give out a few shout outs to Boomset, who was wonderful in terms of supporting our software setup over there. This evening was also possible because of really great support of the Bets New York team. It's a really great organization that's doing some really great stuff around sales recruiting, particularly in enterprise space. McCarter English and Bowery. Is Eric here tonight? I'm going to talk to Eric, but really great in supporting what we do here today. At Workbench, we talked about Actio leads. Ricardo couldn't be here this evening, but he's doing some really interesting things around referrals and referral management for enterprise sales teams. So hopefully next month he'll be here and he can talk a little bit more about exactly what he's trying to build out to help all of us leverage our referral networks a lot more effectively. And without further ado, we can get kicked off with our panel. And the first thing I want to do is create a lot of static. But besides that, I'd like to give just maybe a 30-second intro. We'll start with Matt and kind of work our way back here. Just tell us what you're doing today and an interesting fact.
You had to start down here.
I had to start there. Okay. Well, I just had to go with the gentleman, the scholar with the pocket square.
I have a wife, what can I say? Hi everyone, happy to be here. Matt McClain, Director of Enterprise Sales over at Grovo here in New York. There's
not enough Grovo people. There's some Grovo people.
Is there any Grovo
You
people
should be cheering. Giving you
I see a hat. Today, Grovo is changing the world through learning. Yeah. We are selling to our Fortune 500 companies predominantly, and trying to build out a great team to do it has its hurdles for any startup. We'll talk about some of them today, and really delighted to be here. So, Mark, thanks for having me.
One interesting fact.
I'm an ex-college hockey player.
Carolyn, please.
Hi guys, I'm Carolyn Betts, founder and CEO of Betts Recruiting. And we have a few people.
I think Betts wins, cheering for it. Good work.
A few people here tonight. And yeah, I had a career in enterprise sales prior to starting this company. So I've not only recruit enterprise salespeople and basically the entire revenue side for growth stage tech companies, but I also have been in the shoes of many people in this room. An interesting fact about me, I've been to all of the continents in the world except for Antarctica, and I look forward to going one day, probably on a cruise ship when I'm a little bit older.
I think I have one person here. Brian Wachel from Kahuna.
All right, I want to hear some cheering.
There's the one person, outnumbered. So yeah, really excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me. Kahuna is a mobile marketing automation company, so we're helping leading app companies like New York Times and Yelp and Tumblr with their engagement strategy. So we're actually based in Palo Alto. There's a bunch of us that are starting the New York office, so we're pretty new. And yeah, I mean, I'm a recent New Yorker. I'm actually I lived in Boston for a long time, so yeah, I'm living in New York. Good place to be.
Well, this panel's on hiring for enterprise sales, and one of the things that might be an interesting thing to start off with is, what's your impression right now of the New York hiring scene for enterprise sales? Because a lot of people are saying it's a very challenging environment right now for folks. So Brian, you want to just give us some thoughts, because you're standing up a team right now.
Yeah, so we built the team. So we were 0 4 months ago, and I had a task to get to 6 pretty quickly. We're growing really fast. We actually have a good number of customers that were developed out of our West Coast office. And yeah, I think like we were pretty selected. We're in a pretty new space. So like we need evangelical salespeople, people who are really smart and articulate. So like I talked to a lot of people, and my perception of it is like there's a lot of good candidates, and there's a lot of people who know what they want. But I think there's also a lot of people that are seem to be just kind of like looking for the next best thing, which like if you're hiring, it's not necessarily the greatest thing to look for, but like I know the candidate pool is really strong, and we've looked for people that are like separating themselves by being like focused and articulate.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of people want to hire enterprise salespeople, and there's people that are opportunistic about looking for new opportunities, because I think, especially some of the people in this room tonight. However, a lot of people that are very successful in sales, specifically enterprise, might not want to make a move. So it's hard to find the right people at the right time in enterprise sales, we all know you're not closing 5K deals. It's 100, 200, and everyone who makes a move has a big amount of money that they're usually leaving on the table, which makes it very, very difficult to find people that want to do that are successful, that people also want to hire. So it's a tough market.
Yeah, Matt, you have interesting perspective, because you've been doing a lot of hiring and going through pretty hefty pipeline of candidates. So what's your impression of the New York hiring scene right now?
We've been doing a lot of interviewing. Hiring is difficult, right? I mean, I think you got to start like, what is enterprise sales? Like Grovo, it's pretty simple. It's 10,000 plus employees of the company. It's different at every organization you go to, right? Why is it so hard to find people in enterprise sales? Because there's a handful of people that can really walk the walk, talk the talk, have a higher level of conversation, talk in the long term, not be so short-sighted in sales. And I guess you're looking for people that are thoughtful about their approach to sales, which is, it can be really different. And what that means is different to everyone in the room, but you know it. When you sit down with someone, you know. I mean, when I sit down with someone, I know within a matter of moments.
Would you say it's maybe like a gravitas or just an air of experience? We'll get into that a little bit more detail. Or maybe it's a pocket square, but
There's two.
I'm not going to go there too much tonight.
No, I mean, it's very, I think when you know, when you're sitting with somebody, I know that's not a great answer, but you gotta feel it. And people need to have a really strong understanding of org structures, have a really strong understanding of how Fortune 500 companies work, the ins and outs of those companies, the business units, how they are interdependent upon one another. All of these things are gonna help you to close what we should be closing as enterprise salespeople, which is enterprise-wide contracts, right? Not
As
just
opposed to department.
one business unit. So I think that's an important thing to think about when you look at experience.
Now, I mean, obviously, you're going through huge ramp up in terms of trying to get some folks on the ground. I mean, what are you doing just in terms of like the on-the-ground planning? So how did you come up with, we need X number of enterprise sales reps in this amount of time? And how are you laying kind of the groundwork so you can actually go through this process effectively and efficiently?
Business operations? No. So we look at where we're supposed to be 6 months from now, 12 months from now, right? What are the quotas going to look like? How does the team need to ramp?
So just to hone in on it, so you're working backwards from, okay, this is what we need to make as a business, this is our quota,
Yeah.
and ramping that all, and pulling it all the way down to what you're going to do from a staffing
So a
perspective.
lot of our companies, our sales org is based upon predictable revenue, for those who read the book. And having a structure like that allows us to create really sound models. And I think it's helped us to grow and scale the way that we have, exponentially, I like to think, but also be very consistent in how we've scaled. So yeah, hiring plays into the goals that we need to hit. We need to sit down and assess where we are today, where we need to be. Do we have the bandwidth to get there? What bandwidth do we need? And where does that bandwidth need to be allocated? Is it lead gen? Is it closing? All of that plays into our hiring models. And there's a lot of thought that goes into it. It's not just saying, I want to go to this team. Yeah.
Carolyn, what are you hearing from some of your companies? I mean, are there some sort of best practices that they're employing just to put an on-the-ground process in place? Otherwise, as you know, I mean, a lot of candidates kind of wander through the process and they're thinking, like, why was I never contacted, or what's the next step? I mean, anything that you've kind of seen just from some of the clients you've worked with?
In terms of the hiring process?
Yeah, just like a flat, a process, just to make sure that they can do it time and time again. It's repeatable.
Absolutely. So I think a lot of the companies figure out exactly what it is that they're looking for in these people, and make sure that it's interesting because we recruit everything, as I mentioned, from junior level people to senior level people. When you're looking for enterprise salespeople, it's a little bit more of a cat and mouse than it is with a lot of other people within the organization, right? Because you have to do a certain amount of vetting, figuring out what size deals has this person closed, what logos have they brought on, who are the decision makers, have they sold into multiple business units, all of those things. While if somebody's awesome, you also have to sell them on coming to your organization. So I think the processes that people put into place are really a balance of that, and figuring out which person within the organization takes on which role and when. And that's unique to everybody, but there has to be the vetting, the selling, and then the closing, and then also for the people that you decide not to hire, making sure that you maintain a good relationship with them and that you don't sour your employment brand within the ecosystem, because it's a small world. And I interviewed at that company, those guys, not a big fan or whatever. You don't want people saying that. So there's a lot of things that people are considering, and that's some of them.
Yeah, any perspectives
Yeah, no,
on how you do it?
I would definitely echo that. I think like knowing the ideal profile goes like a long way, and it's gone a long way with helping us figure out who we should approach.
So you're saying the profile like first, like this is who we need to look for.
Well, I mean, at the macro level, I think Matt's got the idea. So like, we've got revenue goals, like we're growing month over month. So like, if we project that, we also look at like opportunity size. So like, we're in a space right now where there's like 2 million apps, and not everyone's an ideal Kahuna candidate, but the like opportunity size is immense. So we're looking at opportunity size. We're trying to figure out like, how do we scale in a way that's thoughtful? And we're bringing on people that like add to the team, add to the culture, but also are a fit for the kind of salesperson that like we've seen be successful. So I think we try and replicate our top reps, not in the sense that like it has to be a direct fit, but a lot of the same characteristics we try to look for when we're hiring, which I mentioned a couple of them before. And I would also echo the idea that like if you interview and like you don't hear back from someone, that's a really, really bad experience, and that's a bad hiring manager. Like even if it's like bad news is better than no news. So like I've experienced it where like there's a little like as a candidate like bad communication, and for me that's a huge turnoff if I'm a candidate. So I'm very thoughtful when I'm hiring that. Like every communication that I have is meaningful and trying to be thoughtful, and even if it's not necessarily the greatest news, which is a tough thing to deliver sometimes, but it's never personal. It's just business, and we're both. I look at it like we're both equally trying to like see if it's a fit.
That's a really good point. To your point, Carolyn, it's almost like doing an enterprise sales in your hiring process, because there are fewer candidates. You really got to be more effective and really more thoughtful about the process at that point. And you can't piss anyone off, because that gets around. And just to think about that ideal candidate and where you're trying to find them from. Right? In San Francisco, you may have a different perspective, Carolyn, because there seems to be more of a base there. New York City, not as much. So where are you going in terms of trying to find candidates? Are there any sort of creative venues or ways you're using to attract top talent?
Yeah, I can talk to that. So we're kind of split. So like we're a little bit different, to echo Matt's point. Like as an app, like Tumblr for us is a really great strategic account. But like for most companies, they fly under the radar because there are 200 or 300 people. Are there any Tumblr people here? No? All right. And like a lot of our best accounts aren't necessarily like true enterprise, like 10,000 person companies. We do work with those too, different kind of sale. So we're actually looking for someone who can, and like a small 200 person company could still be a almost $1 million deal for us, which is a unique dynamic in the scheme of things. So when we're looking for like a true enterprise salesperson, we're looking for someone who can like run an efficient sales process, be very consultative. So like doing the discovery up front, that's a really big element for what we're looking for, is trying to like understand their business initiatives and strategies and goals, and then solve them with Kahuna. And I think that's ultimately where we win deals, is people think that we give them the best chances to succeed. So a long way to answer your question, it takes a little bit of a unique profile in some ways. So like some of it is around references or using like networks. So tapping into like friends of friends or people who know people. Like in my opinion, if someone's telling me this person's legit and they're really good and they've done it before, like that goes way longer or way further than like maybe even a reference later on down the cycle. So like someone who actually has connected through a networking kind of perspective, or like through a reference, I think that's traditionally. But and then to give a shout out to Bets, like they've also been amazing. I think they do a really good job, and I've talked to a lot of recruiters, and I think that can be hit or miss. Some of them are very geared towards their perspective, but Bets did a really good job, and I think Sarah and Sally are here. So yeah, like they did a really great job of like understanding who we were trying to find and like bringing ideal candidates to us.
Yeah, and a lot of the talk seems to be around passive candidates, and trying to pull them or find them somewhere, some way in other companies. And what have you seen that kind of works? And, Matt, Carolyn, do you have any sort of perspectives on like trying to reach out and find those passive candidates and the process of bringing some of those folks to a point where you might have that first initial interview?
Want me to go?
You can go first.
Because you're probably not going to like my answer. I don't know that for sure. Who's a passive candidate? Who's not looking for a better job at all times, right? I could be making all the money in the world, happy, successful, loving where I am, and somebody comes to me and presents me with something better. You're not going to think about it? I mean,
Why would I not like that? That's the entire basis.
I'm going for that.
He wanted some argument, so here it is, right? No. Not that you wouldn't like it, sorry, I misspoke. But I do genuinely believe, a passive candidate, somebody that's not looking for a job actively, I mean, at the end of the day, I think that we're all going to be consistently looking for another job, not maybe out there on the market, but always open to it. You have to be open to it. Isn't that career progression? Isn't that career pathing? Isn't that how you grow as an individual, as a professional? Don't remain closed off to things, ever. I think it's a bad idea. Don't know where I'll be 6 months, 12 months. I love Grovo. Love it. It's my passion. But why would any of us close ourselves off to something else?
Why would someone want to work for you?
That's a good question.
Because I'm really, really nice.
No, but I mean, what you just said is very provocative.
How so?
How so? If I'm going to join an organization and you're going to be my boss, and
Yeah.
you're not committed to the organization because you got one foot out the door at all times,
Okay.
that doesn't make for wanting to bring somebody in.
Can I just jump in on that? And I don't work for Grovo, but I will say that as someone who is open to opportunities, I would much rather work for a manager who's realistic instead of idealistic, because in today's workforce, I would much rather work for someone who can give me, raw feedback in how I'm doing, in how I can improve. If I'm open to a new opportunity, I would much rather come to a manager who says, I recognize your potential and I'm okay with you seeking opportunities. I would much rather work for a manager who says, I'm okay to you having an open mindset.
Vanessa, that's like an amazing point, because we think about, is that a clap? The reality is like we want to put on this vision that we are 100% supporters of a company. We want to be, especially as leaders in sales, right? There's a fine line.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the one that necessarily says that, but I think there's a good point in saying that you want some of that feedback. In fact, next month we'll be talking about sales coaching and sales training, and a large part of that, some of that discussion, we'll get into next month. But I think it'll be a really interesting
If I could just
conversation.
quickly respond with one
Yeah.
thing. I am fully in love with my company and passionate about what I do. And I think what it all comes back to when we center the topic back on hiring, just to kind of address your question, comment head on. I'm passionate about people, and that's what hiring is about. And what's best for that person at all times. That might not always be the company that they're with. And I think having a passion for people is critical in hiring. Giving them the benefit of the doubt at all times. I think that speaks more volumes than any company that you're ever with, is a passion for people. And I think that's why Grovo has great people, is because we recognize that passion for people.
And I think,
Yeah, I would say to this point, I think like people, like I've left companies because of people I've worked for. So I think like people don't leave companies necessarily; they leave people. in my experience, and from what I've seen from others. And I think, like, as a manager, like, I have to do a good enough job understanding what my reps, like, ambitions are, and, like, make sure that they're, like, accounted for. So if they're, like, if they want to grow and they don't feel like they can do it with us, and I, like, then, like, that's a shame on me for not addressing that, like, making sure that I understand, like, what are your goals, how do we get you there, how do we develop a plan to make sure you have the skills necessary to, like, advance your career. It's like, I agree that, like, we all, like, I mean, I've changed jobs, we all, like, could change jobs, but the ideal scenario is the company that I'm at, like, is accommodating the fact that I'm working hard and I've got a career path, and they've got, like, a way that I can get there. And I think, like, I've been frustrated in careers before or jobs before where, like, I didn't feel like I had that career path, or I didn't know how to get there, and that's ultimately why I left. So I think maybe that answers the question a little bit, but if the company does a good job, you shouldn't have to look elsewhere if you love it.
That's a good point around, career path. And you almost look at, and there's some folks here are going to be, they're looking for jobs. I mean, yeah, when I think about jobs just from the candidate perspective, one is career path, but you also want to be challenged in your job. You want to be with a great culture. And really the last part of that is compensation and all that other stuff. But if you're able to find the culture fit, if you're able to find the challenge, and you know that you can grow in a company, you have a career path, I think that's a huge win right there. I mean, you're hitting 3 really great important things for building your own career. And maybe to flip this back around, think about what you think about as a hiring manager and your experiences. What are the things that get you really interested in terms of when you're talking to someone for enterprise sales role, really any sales role? What is the spark? What are the things that you really look for that says, yes, this person is definitely someone I want to work with? Yeah, Caroline, please.
Okay, positivity is the big one. In sales, I think it's probably the most rejected profession out there. And so somebody who has, a very positive outlook on life, upbeat personality, a lot of charisma and sparkle goes a long way. And, not to mention, obviously, history of success and, being able to explain why they've been successful and understanding the things that they've done to make it happen. But, I think attitude and then, aptitude are the 2 things that I really look for in any position.
And Matt, you mentioned passion, but really comes down to heart and hiring. What about for sales? Are you looking for the hard-driven enterprise sales rep, or someone might not necessarily fit that type of prototypical enterprise sales profile for?
I try to walk into every interview like I don't have a clear-cut vision of what I'm looking for. Because if you do, you're gonna hire all the same people and end up with just like a cult.
It's kind of how it felt at Oracle, by the way, but I won't go there. Oh, sorry, Paul.
Having an open mind walking into any interview is imperative. Bringing different people into a team, into an organization is going to make that team stronger. Can they do their job? Can we help them to do their job? Can we tee this person up for success? Will this person relate to the individuals that they work with?
Yeah, so
60 hours.
there must be some core things as you're going through an interview that you're trying to suss out, you're trying to understand a little bit more. I mean, so what would be some of those core things that you think should come out through the hiring process, through one interview or a series of interviews that you're really looking for?
Connection. By the time you're talking to me, somebody's already determined that you should be sitting there. I haven't looked at a resume in 6 months. Connect with me. Let's talk as people. Who are you? What are you about? What are you into? What's your experience? If what's on paper can't come across verbally, how are you gonna sell something that's not yourself over the phone?
What do you think about resumes?
I mean, I agree, rapport is a big thing. You know, I think rapport is a really big thing. I think the things that I particularly look for, I look for someone who's like really focused on learning and growing their career. So if they say things like, you know, you could be the most successful person in the world, and the top reps I've seen in my experience are people that are always looking to learn from someone else. Even though they're the #1 rep, like they'll take something from someone else and they'll continually grow. That's a huge thing for me. If you come in, like, so experience matters, and like obviously, you know, having success, but people who just don't want to stay stagnant. So I think that's a really big thing. You know, I also just like, I look at their approach of how they interact with clients or prospects. So, you know, like how would they approach like certain scenarios? You know, have they gone through like, one thing that I typically ask is like, talk to me about the sale you're most proud of. It doesn't have to be the biggest, but talk to me about the sale you're most proud of, and walk me through it. Like walk me through it start to finish, and just like bring me through how you would bring someone through a sales cycle. Which gives me a lot of insight into, you know, how they approach different objections, and we also try and make it interactive. So, you know, I think the personability side, I think like preparation, you'd be surprised. Like another question I typically ask is like, if your mom was asking like what Kahuna did, what would you say? And like, I'd say half the people like couldn't actually, even in one line, say what Kahuna did,
Really?
which is amazing. Maybe not half, but like a good enough chunk where I'm like, wow, this is unbelievable. So
Preparation.
Preparation is obviously big.
And Caroline, any really interesting questions or thoughts?
Oh, the resume question I thought was interesting that you asked
Yeah,
for.
sure.
And so I have a very systematic way that I look at resumes, and even for enterprise salespeople, I go to the bottom first. I look at where they went to school and what they were involved in college. If they were an athlete, I find that athletes, people that were involved, honors, anything like that really stands out. And then I look at their career trajectory from the beginning to where they are at this time. And I try and decipher what their thought process was as they went through the different steps in their career. And then also when I talk to somebody, that's exactly what I do. Okay, walk me through your resume from the beginning to now, and hear how they decided to make the different steps in their career that they did, because it's very insightful to hear why people left, and then also obviously numbers, successes, percentage to quota, logos, etc. And I can pretty much decide based off that if somebody's going to be a fit for my company or one of my clients' companies.
Yeah.
I actually like the reason why people left. That's a really good one, because I think that gives insight into like that's the next best thing. Like I left because like someone called me and they offered me more money. It's like, well, I mean, if you start and someone calls you and offers you more money, are you going to leave me? So, yeah, like, well, that's not a great thing. So I think that gives, honestly, I think that gives good insight into like their mindset of like what they're actually looking for in their next career or their next position.
So there's no sell me this pen type of questions during your interviews? Which, by the way, if you've seen Boiler Room, a really great scene about the sell me this pen sales question.
That used to be huge when I first got into recruiting in 2004, by the way. And one of our clients asked that the other day on the interview, and I looked around at my team and I'm like, do people still do that?
No, I hope not.
No, they don't.
Great movie reference.
So any things that, you know, during the interview process that with a candidate that just really turn you off, like things that are just immediate, like no-gos, I need to stop the process now. You know, you're thinking that.
There's no like no-gos, but like there's things that drive me crazy. Like if you don't look at me in the eyes, man, what are you looking at?
You may be discriminating for people who have like an eye that kind of goes in different directions.
You can get one connected.
Cut this, stop taping.
Are you talking about me? Like,
Yeah, I mean that's it drives me crazy. And it's because how's a person going to look if they're in an in-person meeting? How are they going to look at somebody dead in the eyes, right? I'd say that's a pet peeve. There's no hard stops to an interview, right? I mean, Grovo, we talk a lot about benefit of the doubt. It's a big thing. Every candidate that walks out the door, give them the benefit of the doubt, no matter what. And I think.
How about folks who maybe have non-traditional sales backgrounds, or maybe have gaps? Maybe they're not working right now. Still walk through the process?
Of course, yeah. Benefit of the doubt, every single person.
Okay.
For me, my no-go, even for an enterprise person, is no resume. Like, you showed up to, and I know I've had it for executive assistants, all different types of stuff, and that the interview for me will stop right then and there. And if anyone ever meets with you guys from my company without a resume, I would expect for you guys to do the same thing.
Yeah, I think for me, the no-goes are around like approaching the interview process like a sales process. So people who aren't diligent with following up or closing meetings. We could have a really good casual interview, but you're a salesperson. Like, you should be closing me on the opportunity if it is something that you want. So I think I've seen people who are like very passive, and that to me that's a turnoff. It's like, are you going to be as passive as you would be during the sales process as you are now? So for me, I think like follow up and being passive during the sales process, especially at the end.
What do you think? Am I a fit? Would I be great for this role? Close me right at the end. Anyone that does that, giving it a go. I mean, whether the interview went great or not.
I mean, at the very least, you'll know.
Yeah.
Like,
It's awesome.
I don't, maybe, you'll know when we're like,
Can I use the restroom?
it's on the
I'll do it.
table. Like,
Yeah.
you're putting us
Love that.
back on the spot. That, like,
Yeah.
I mean, we have to answer that. So.
Yeah, good thought. Yeah. Is there anything that maybe particular or unique about your process? Good example is when I was at Siebel, we'd have the initial interview, and then they'd want us to come back and actually present something to them, usually next day, like a 5 to 10 minute pitch on something that you know really well. Anything that you do kind of along the same lines, or things that are kind of interesting that kind of help you understand or delve deeper into the person and their thought process?
Yeah, there's actually two things that we do. So an exercise that we do pretty early on is you pick 3 apps that you think would be good Kahuna clients, and you take one of them and you tell us like how you would actually get into. So you pick someone, like find the person on LinkedIn, so show us the LinkedIn profile, and then actually show us the email that you would send to like try and get in the door. So I think it's, even though we have a sales development team that's like tasked with setting up meetings, it kind of gives us the approach of like how hungry are you, and how, like, if you need to, how can you get in? And then the second part later on is we have candidates actually present either to us or like selling Kahuna as they would, or in some cases, like if it makes sense, like selling their product to us if we're potential buyers. So we actually get to see like how they would do discovery and how they would ask questions and how they bring people through, like, all right, you mentioned this, here's how we can solve that problem. So yeah, that's a big part of our process. Like, it gives insight into like how they'd approach like accounts, building out of the target accounts, and then also taking people through a sales cycle.
Yeah. I want to ask a little about kind of the ending approach, right? Decided on a few people. Now it's time to negotiate. Any experiences there that you've had in terms of like how you handle negotiations or a process that you have in place?
Yeah.
Anyway?
Yeah, I mean.
This is actually specific to that.
Sure.
Somebody asks for equity. Do you guys get excited about that? Is that something that you say, okay, this is a great question, it's a good thing to ask? Yeah, I would rather have somebody say, okay, yes, I want to have equity in this company than not ask. I think that's
Particularly important for startups. I mean,
Is that important?
does equity come?
100%. Yeah. If that's your first question, I know. So it gives me insight into 2 things. Like, you're in it for the long haul, because you're not, like, if you're there for a year and a half, like, equity doesn't mean that much. Or for a year, it means nothing. So it means you're in it for the long haul. And yeah, I think we're trying to bring people on that are wanting to grow the company with us. So that, yeah, 100%. Like, I'd rather have someone and I'll fight for someone to go get more equity than like a few $1,000s here or there on the salary or total ET.
It's commitment, right?
Absolutely.
Well, and usually this stuff has been vetted out before the end of the process, and but yeah, in terms of best practices, in terms of negotiating, it really runs the gamut, and a lot of times it just depends on how well they interview, what type of quota they're willing to carry, what they're willing to commit in terms of, right, I guess that quota number, and
It's sales. Where do we make our money? Anybody? Commission.
I mean, do you expect a candidate to come in and negotiate?
Of course. Yeah, 100%.
If they don't, that's also a huge red flag. If you take a job without negotiating, it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're
Left
thinking
money
to
on the
yourself,
table.
oh, geez.
like, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
So-
It's just as important as closing us.
Absolutely. So, we're getting towards the end. I wanted to ask something that doesn't get a lot of attention is the onboarding process. Right? You spend so much effort to get candidates in, go through all this process. What about the onboarding? How important is that for Grovo, for example? I mean, what are you doing in terms of making sure that reps are situated and successful?
It's critical. I mean, we can bring in the best talent in the world unless we set them up with the tools, processes, systems to make them successful. At Grovo, we're just setting them up for failure. We want people to be ramped in 3 months. Enterprise, ramped in 3 months. I mean, it's asking a lot, but guess what? We're doing it. Candidates are doing it. New hires are doing it. We got a guy
in 3
who's 6
months?
months in who's well over $1 million in ARR. I mean, I think Grovo's also
So you're
a
trained.
learning company, so.
Got a built-in advantage.
But I think it is all a part of the hiring process. I think anyone that closes off onboarding is actually a part of that process. You're setting people up for failure. I think it's probably one of the most intricate parts, but also important parts.
Something that you've seen that really kind of works from an onboarding perspective?
well, I've definitely seen what doesn't work.
But yeah, I mean, what doesn't, like, what have you seen that's been abysmal?
Well, people show up first day. I mean, I've seen it all, right? I mean, but what you just want to make them feel welcome. They quit a job where they were successful, or, somebody that shows up their first day, you have their desk set up, you have their computer ready, you have a training program that they get into, you have a buddy, you have somebody to take them to lunch, and all these things sound really simple, but when they don't happen, and you have people coming into a new company, and it doesn't feel like anyone wants them there, it's a very uncomfortable feeling. So for hiring managers, especially enterprise, you're busy, you're in the field, you're traveling, you have $1 million deals that you're closing, but to ignore a rep, even if at this most senior level, when they start, you're setting yourself up for failure, and having to go through that grueling hiring process all over again sucks way more than it does to make sure the person has a positive, first experience with your company.
It doesn't sound like you have to do a lot of really big, complex things, just getting the simple things right. What about at Kahuna?
Yeah, well, I mean, we 6 people onboarded pretty much right out of the gate. Mark is smiling back there. So I think in some cases, as a startup, we learn, and I think we try to be adaptive and hear what's working and what's not. For a company of when I started, we're 40, now we're 80. We actually had a light LMS in place. We had a lot of processes which was pretty good for a small company, but we're very mindful that the excitement's there when they first start, and you could easily lose that. So onboarding it's critical to get people scaled up and selling faster. For obvious reasons, the faster they learn the product and the process, the faster they're going to start selling. But even just that excitement and helping build rapport and getting them into the culture. So the little things we've implemented something a new hire lunch that they go out with the team, and it's a good way to just be casual and get to know everyone. So little things like that can go a long way. But yeah, we're it's a work in progress, if I'm being candid, and I think, I don't think there's like a company that does it like exceptionally well, and I think what I've seen from the best companies is they're constantly trying to figure out better ways to get people comfortable and ramped up as fast as possible.
So I'm going to ask one last question and then open it up to the audience here, but I just want to, one last passing thought in terms of hiring. I just want to let people know about, to really think about either from the hiring manager perspective, because there's quite a few hiring managers here looking to build up teams, or from the candidate perspective. I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think, so from the candidate perspective, another thing that I actually look for is someone who's like, it's apparent that they're interviewing me as much as I'm interviewing them. Like that's actually a really important thing for me. Like you should be, every time I've been a candidate, I'm like, is this the next place where I'm gonna like take my career to the next level? And if I don't see, so like if you're going on interviews, be confident and be like, be prepared, but like don't be afraid. Like if the interviewer is asking you a multitude of questions and they don't make it interactive, like be assertive and be like, hey, I'd like to either A, stop because it's not the right fit, or like be assertive and tell them like, I'd love to learn more about like, how I could be a good fit here. So I think that would just be my guidance from the candidate perspective.
Yeah, I like that comfort and confidence when you walk into an interview of being able to understand why somebody would want to hire you and knowing exactly what you're looking for in an opportunity and making sure that it's a fit for yourself as well. And so piggybacking on that, I couldn't agree more.
Awesome. We're all going to echo the same thing. Thanks, Brian.
There's so much agreement here. We're going to hug it out afterwards. But
aside from that, which is, it's huge. I mean, you should be asking me more questions than I'm asking you from the start. It's awesome. You want to know everything. We're going to spend 60 hours a week together. Do you want to spend 60 hours with me? Let's find out right away. Be real also. Like, don't try to like put up a false front at all. I think we all have interviewed a lot of people. It's pretty apparent when you're not real. Be like real. I think that would be the only thing I would add.
No.
But Brian's point is most
I really appreciate it. Yeah, I want to just let folks ask like a few questions, because obviously it's the community. I want you to kind of bring your perspective. So, a gentleman in the hat there.
Grovo hat here.
The Grovo hat.
My question's about the tail end, right? So someone that you're working with, that you went through the growing process with, you did onboarding correctly, they've been with you for a year or two, and they're just not working out, right? Like something has changed, maybe it's their motivation, or maybe it's the company's outgrown them, or whatever. How do you kind of handle that situation? Because it tells a lot about a company, not just on like how they're recruiting, but also how they're handling situations where someone is no longer a fit.
So you're talking about kind of post-hire?
I'm talking about the exit side.
Fire.
The firing? Well, we didn't necessarily want to get into that, but do you have just like a quick thought on that?
Yeah, no surprises ever. Let the person know immediately when, and do it in writing and have multiple conversations prior to the final one.
Any other questions? Mark?
Why not the sell me this pen scenario in an audition hiring process? Just curious.
I've done not to sell me this pen, but sell me what you're selling now. I mean, don't sell me Grovo. You don't know Grovo well enough to sell it. But I've definitely done. Give me your elevator. Give me that pitch.
Yeah, dude,
a lot of times I don't have
think people
pen
give the
elevators.
elevator pitch. It does make a lot of sense, but you want to know what are they doing today?
Yeah, well, and I think there's like maybe different stages of the process. Like early on, I want to get to know the person and figure out if like they're going to be, if, like we can work together and like our goals mesh of what they want to achieve and where we're headed. And then like later on, I think like sell me the pen might, like you want to know the person can actually sell just being buddies with them or her. So yeah, I think there's a time for it, but early on I'm less interested in that.
Well, I think there's just more strategic questions that you can ask people too that give you a better idea, like the mom Kahuna question. That's great, same idea, but less of a dick move, setting the pen down and being like, sell me this. I don't know.
Whoa, Vanessa.
Well, I think too that it's a different skill set when you think about it. To interview is a skill set. Some people are really bad at interviewing, but it doesn't mean that they wouldn't be able to sell your product. And I think that as a hiring manager, you can't distinguish between the two. That's on you. That means that you're not able to interview, and you're not able to separate that skill set. So I don't necessarily think that saying, sell me this pen, is gonna put your candidate in a position of, I feel comfortable having a conversation with you, like to echo Matt's sentiment. I'm not gonna know who you are as a person. I can't see how you interact in a normal conversation, because you would never, ever, ever go to a potential client and give a sell me the pen speech. Like, that's just not, and if that is happening,
Or maybe if it's a pen company, but yeah, I mean, it's,
I think that's a valid point, but I would actually say that, like, at some degree, like, everyone is selling selling themselves. That sounds actually really worse than what I was trying to say, but like,
yeah, we're not selling it.
Yeah. So I think, like, just the way that you're, like, presenting yourself, I guess, would be a more appropriate way to say that. And, like, even if you're not in sales, like, you know, HR people, when they're trying to, like get approval for a budget, like, they're selling, you know, so, like, you're always kind of, like, selling. So I think the way you present yourself means a lot.
Yeah, Stephanie.
So I'm not sure if this is legal or not, but have you guys done a personality test or like Myers-Briggs? Have you incorporated that into?
Personality test.
Yeah.
Thoughts on the tests?
No.
No.
Yeah.
I actually would, if I was a candidate, I'd probably walk away. I've talked to companies that said they do that. I don't know. I think that's just like you're pigeonholing people into a certain dynamic that probably, like, I think that maybe was like the old way of doing sales. Like, all right, we're cookie cutter. Here's our ideal candidate. Let's go find a million people just like that. Like, we want it to be dynamic. We don't want, like, some people are a little bit more aggressive, some people are a little bit more passive, some people, like, if you could just show that you can be consultative and bring people through a process, it doesn't matter if you're, like, slightly more introverted or slightly more extroverted and, like, more feeling, more thought, like, to us, that doesn't matter.
Yeah, it was actually.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, didn't we get into sales because we were bad test takers in the first place?
That's a good point. In the back.
Yeah, so I actually had a question. I work for Carolyn. She's my boss. And to sort of go along with that, it seems like everybody's trying to evaluate sales DNA, just sort of at its most, like,
Good point.
core. And I know that some of our clients like to do sort of those can, role play type of exercises, and those are always hard to evaluate what makes a good salesperson and what doesn't. So I guess what I'm asking is, a lot of clients come to us and say, we're looking for that sales DNA. What does that mean to you guys? I guess Grovo and Kahuna, great fun.
Yeah, that wasn't a plug at all. I like that.
And sort of, what are those?
He sells, he's good.
Just building a rapport with the hiring manager, who candidates are sort of obligated to build a rapport with, or sort of force it, versus evaluating those skills with actual potential clients once they get on.
If you don't mind, I want to hear your perspective, Carolyn, because having worked with a lot of companies with a lot of strong opinions, when they ask you to find candidates with the sales DNA, what's your perspective on that? I mean, because there is no sales DNA. I don't know, but there's maybe a particular culture. So.
No, I love that because you can tell. It's one of the things where people have that. But what I explain what I'm looking for with the confidence. Somebody who has a history of success can explain it easily, competitive. There's just so many things, and that's actually much easier for me than finding somebody who sold into X company with Y size deals for a certain number of years. That's a very, very specific sales DNA is more of a feeling, right? That'll be a good fit.
Any thoughts on what Kahuna does?
Yeah, I mean, sales DNA, like, I think we're a little bit particular. So we are, and I've mentioned a couple of these, like, we are looking for someone who's smart and articulate, who approaches things like in a thoughtful way, but also like pragmatic. I think like we're looking for someone who can be very consultative and like also quick on your feet. I think that's a big thing for us. So when we're doing a discovery call or our first meeting, the first 30 minutes is about them, and if we could spin that around and take what we just ingested and apply that in that same meeting, that gives us an enormous advantage. So like I've interviewed people, like you could be aggressive and you could be competitive and you could be personable and funny and all these things, but you've sold just by like demoing the product. So for us, that doesn't work. You can't. This isn't like look at how shiny our thing is and they're going to buy it, which some people that does, and that's awesome. I wish ours was a little bit more that way sometimes, but yeah, for us, it's our sales DNA is someone who's like hungry and like very consultative.
We'll take one last question. And then obviously everyone's going to be here afterwards. Gentleman up front.
Yes, so I suppose my question is really when some of the candidates first approaching you, when they're following up after the interview, what are the sort of things that have, ways they've approached you, followed up that have really impressed, and what are the things that you thought, oh my God, still well clear?
Quick vignette in terms of follow-up, or thoughts on follow-up?
I mean, it's a good question. I think, so like a relatively immediate follow-up is impressive. So like it shows me that you're excited. Like actually saying that you're excited, it's I guess it seems special, but like some people just like thank me and looking forward to the next steps. So I'm looking for someone who's like excited and gets back to me right away and like even explains why they feel like they'd be good at this role. I think that goes a long way. And then the inverse of that would just be people like a couple days later, like they'll follow up like really excited, like I mean, what just happened in 2 days? Where like, I mean, if you got a car accident, maybe I can see that. But
really, and very like 2 days afterwards, like they should actually like provide more thoughtfulness.
Yeah, exactly.
Which to your point, that's an important part of being in sales, thoughtfulness.
Exactly.
Yeah, I also think that continuing the closing, next step, setting up the time, short, sweet, explaining why you want to work for the company, no scroll down.
I don't have any problem with like more questions. Shows you're thinking about it. Just thought of this, walked out of the room with thought of this. Really, really curious to hear your take.
All right. Well, I have to just thank each one of you. I mean, thank you so much, Brian, Caroline, and Matt, for being out here this evening and giving your talk. As I mentioned before, everyone's going to be here for the next 30-odd minutes or so. So please do introduce yourself and continue the conversation. A few announcements. I told you or mentioned briefly we're doing this thing in Boston. It kicks off September 17th. Anyone you know in Boston, please let them know. Our next event is actually the Sales Development Meetup, September 2nd on cold calling. So if you're interested in getting deep and diving into the hows and lots of cold calling, look for the Sales Development Meetup. And this next meetup will be September 15th, again here on a Tuesday evening. And we're going to be talking about sales training, sales coaching. And I want to hear from all of you, if you have some really interesting perspectives or maybe some interesting speakers or things that you'd want to hear about sales training and sales coaching, definitely let me know. I'm Mark at birch.co, so I'm very easy to find. You probably get all my emails as well from MailChimp, whatever, but maybe too many. And just one last thought, if you have any plates or bottles or whatever, please deposit them in the recyclable bins. And thank you again so much for this really great evening. Thank you.